Rocco stares at his phone, reading the text from his father. "You're not invited to Mom's birthday. The family decided you're an embarrassment." His sister Amanda's comment appears seconds later. Finally, his hands shake, but he manages a calm reply. "So the family votes with my money now?" With steady fingers, he closes every account they've touched, including the venue deposit. 4 days later, his phone explodes with missed calls. But by then, everything has already changed. I never thought I'd be uninvited to my own mother's 60th birthday party, especially not one I was secretly financing. The text from my father came on a Tuesday morning while I was preparing for a client meeting. I had to read it 3 times to believe it was real. "You're not invited to Mom's birthday. The family decided you're an embarrassment." No explanation, no apology, just a blunt statement, as if informing me the weather might be cloudy. I sat down at my kitchen counter, coffee forgotten, as my phone buzzed again with a message from my sister Amanda. Finally, like they'd been waiting to cut me out, like this was the culmination of some long-held desire. I set my phone down and stared out my apartment window at the Boston skyline, the city already humming with morning energy. At 32, I'd built a life many would envy. Financial analyst at one of the top firms in the city, corner apartment with a view, and enough savings to feel secure. What my family didn't know, or perhaps didn't care to acknowledge, was that my success had become their safety net. For years I'd been the one they called when bills came due, or emergencies arose. The responsible one, the reliable one, the family ATM. It started small, back when I landed my first job after college. Mom needed help with a medical bill. Dad's truck needed repairs. My brother Greg wanted to take classes at the community college. My sister Amanda needed a security deposit for her first apartment. I never hesitated to help because that's what family does. But somewhere along the way, it became expected rather than appreciated. The occasional request became monthly obligations. The grateful thanks became entitled demands. And through it all, I kept giving, hoping that eventually they would see me as more than just a checkbook. Mom's 60th birthday had been the talk of the family for months. She'd always wanted a big celebration, something lavish to make up for all the birthdays spent working double shifts when we were kids. So 3 months ago, when Dad mentioned they were thinking of just having a small gathering at home because times were tight, I offered to help. "Let me take care of it," I told him. "Mom deserves something special." What I didn't say was that I would cover everything. The venue at the Riverfront Hotel, the catering for 50 guests, the live jazz band Mom had always loved, the photographer to capture every moment. Every detail arranged and paid for through my accounts, with Dad listed as the planner so Mom would believe it was his gift to her. I picked up my phone again and scrolled back through text messages from the past few weeks. There was no hint, no warning that this was coming. Just the usual requests for money and family gossip. Whatever I had done to embarrass them had either been a sudden development or, more likely, a convenient excuse. "So the family votes with my money now?" I texted back, surprising myself with the calm in my response when my hands could barely hold the phone steady. There was no immediate reply, which gave me time to think. I opened my banking app and stared at the list of accounts, many with family members as secondary users or beneficiaries. My mother's medication fund, my father's emergency account, the joint account I shared with Greg to help him learn financial responsibility, the auto payments for Amanda's student loans. Years of financial support laid out in neat digital rows. And now I wasn't good enough to attend a party I had financed. I made a decision then, cold and clear through the haze of hurt. If I wasn't family enough to celebrate with them, I wasn't family enough to support them. One by one, I began closing accounts and canceling auto payments. The venue deposit was the last to go, requiring a phone call to the event manager explaining that plans had changed. As I worked, a notification popped up on my phone. A charge on my credit card at an electronics store in Quincy. A charge I hadn't made. I pulled up the account details and felt my stomach drop as I scrolled through the last 3 months of statements. Dozens of charges I didn't recognize. Restaurants I'd never visited. Gas stations in towns I hadn't been to. Someone was using my credit card without my knowledge. And given the locations, all near my brother Greg's apartment, it wasn't hard to guess who. This was the first real betrayal, but as the day unfolded, I would discover it was far from the last. After discovering Greg had been using my credit card without permission, I took a personal day from work. My mind couldn't focus on market trends and investment portfolios when my own family had just stabbed me in the back. I needed answers, and I needed space to process what was happening. At home, I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I checked social media specifically to see what my family was posting. We were all connected online, but I rarely paid attention, too busy with work and my own life to follow their daily updates. What I found sent a wave of nausea through me. There were dozens of posts about Mom's birthday planning going back weeks, photos of my sister and brother at the venue I'd booked, taking credit for finding the perfect place. Dad posting about how excited he was to give Diane the celebration she deserves after all these years. Distant cousins and family friends commenting on how wonderful they all were for putting together such a special event. Not a single mention of my contribution. Not a word about my involvement. Just as I'd requested, they'd kept my financial support quiet so Mom would believe it came from all of them. But they'd taken that silence and transformed it into erasure. I scrolled further and found photos from a planning committee meeting at my parents' house from 2 weeks ago. Everyone was there, glasses raised in a toast. Everyone except me, who had never been invited to participate beyond providing my credit card. The exclusion stung, but what hurt more were the comments underneath. Amanda responding to an aunt who asked about me. Rocco's too busy making money to bother with family stuff. Dad adding, "You know how he is. Thinks he's too good for us regular folks now." I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. How long had they been portraying me as the snobbish, absent son while simultaneously depending on my money? The hypocrisy was staggering. My phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Drew, my friend since middle school, and one of the few people who knew both sides of me, the successful professional and the family doormat. "Hey, what's up?" His voice was casual, unaware of my world imploding. "They uninvited me from Mom's birthday," I said, the words feeling strange as they left my mouth. "The family decided I'm an embarrassment." There was a pause, then Drew let out a low whistle. "That's messed up, especially since you're paying for the whole thing." I corrected. "I've already canceled everything." "Good," Drew said without hesitation. "It's about time you stood up to them. I've been watching them take advantage of you for years." His words hit me like a physical blow. "You think they've been taking advantage of me? Rocco, come on. Your brother drives a nicer car than you do, and he works part-time at a vape shop. Your sister had a wedding that would make a Kardashian jealous, and your parents vacation twice a year. Meanwhile, you haven't taken a day off in 3 years except to drive your dad to doctor's appointments. What would you call it?" Put that way, it was hard to argue. But the realization brought another wave of pain. If it was so obvious to Drew, had everyone in my life seen it except me? The conversation with Drew left me restless, needing to understand the depth of the deception. I did something I'm not proud of. I logged into the family email account we'd set up years ago for sharing photos and planning holidays. I hadn't checked it in months, maybe longer. There I found the family group chat I'd never been added to. Scrolling through messages made my chest tighten until I could barely breathe. My sister Amanda regularly mocked my career success, painting me as a materialistic snob who thought I was too good for my working-class roots. My brother Greg shared jokes at my expense, many revolving around how easy it was to get money from me. Dad occasionally defended me, but weakly, and more often joined in with complaints about how I lorded my success over them, even as he asked for more financial help. The worst discovery came in a thread from 3 months ago, right when planning for Mom's birthday began. Dad had written, "Rocco's covering everything. Don't tell your mother. And by the way, this might be a good time to bring up the lake house idea. He'll be feeling generous with everyone watching." Amanda had replied, "Perfect. I'll make sure to sit next to him and mention how much Mom would love having a family vacation spot." They had been planning to use Mom's birthday party, which I was financing, as an opportunity to ask me for a loan to buy a vacation property. The manipulation was so calculated it made me physically ill. I closed the email and sat in silence, memories flooding back with new context. Amanda's wedding last year, which I'd paid for entirely after she and her fiancé claimed they'd lost their savings in a bad investment. Dad constantly asking for my advice on financial matters, then later telling extended family members about his smart money moves. Greg's sudden interest in spending time together, always at expensive restaurants where the bill inevitably came to me. That afternoon, I had a previously scheduled session with my therapist, Dr. Wilson. I'd been seeing him for 6 months, originally to deal with work stress. Now I sat in his office, pouring out the whole sordid story. I feel like such a fool, I concluded. How did I not see this? Dr. Wilson leaned forward. Rocco, you saw what you wanted to see because you love your family. There's no shame in that. But now that you see the truth, the question is, what are you going to do about it? What indeed? As I left his office, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back to being the family ATM. Something had to change, and it had to start with me. The morning after discovering the depths of my family's deception, I woke up with unusual clarity. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but it was now accompanied by a cold determination. I needed to document everything before taking further action. No more emotional decisions. This would be methodical, like analyzing a failing investment. I took another day off work and spread documents across my dining table. Bank statements, credit card bills, property tax payments, insurance premiums, medical expenses. For 7 years, I had been supporting my family in ways large and small, often without recognition or thanks. Now I needed to understand exactly what that support looked like. By noon, I had created a spreadsheet detailing every payment, loan, and gift. The total at the bottom of the screen made me sit back in my chair, stunned. Over $300,000. Enough for a down payment on a house in Boston's expensive market. Enough to significantly boost my retirement savings. Enough to change the trajectory of my financial future. And that didn't include the loans that had never been repaid, or the countless dinners, groceries, and small expenses I'd covered without thinking twice. My phone rang, interrupting my calculations. It was Samantha, my financial advisor. Rocco, I got your message. You wanted to discuss separating your finances from your family members? Yes, I confirmed. I need to know the cleanest way to do this without causing unnecessary harm. Well, that depends on what types of accounts we're talking about, she said. Joint accounts are straightforward to close if both parties agree, but can be complicated if they don't. Authorized users on credit cards can be removed immediately. Automatic payments can be stopped with proper notice. For the next hour, we went through every financial connection I had with my family, creating a plan for separation that would be firm, but not vindictive. I didn't want to leave my mother without her medication or cause bills to go unpaid without warning, but I also couldn't continue being the secret support system for people who didn't respect me. One last thing, Samantha said before hanging up. Are you absolutely sure about this? Family financial entanglements can be emotional as well as practical. I'm sure, I said, more confident than I'd felt in years. It's long overdue. Just as I ended the call, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment I wondered if my family had somehow learned of my financial maneuvers. But when I opened the door, I found my cousin Jordan standing there, looking uncomfortable. Hey, he said, can I come in? I need to talk to you. Jordan and I had been close growing up but had drifted apart in adulthood. He wasn't immediate family, but he was at most family functions and was particularly close to my sister. I invited him in, curious about his unexpected visit. I heard you're not coming to Aunt Diane's birthday, he began, sitting stiffly on my couch. I wasn't invited, I corrected. There's a difference. Jordan looked confused. What are you talking about? Uncle Paul told everyone you refused to come because you're too busy with work. A fresh wave of anger washed over me. That's not true. Dad texted me yesterday saying I wasn't invited because I'm an embarrassment to the family. That's not what they're telling people. Jordan pulled out his phone and showed me a group text where my father claimed I had declined the invitation due to important business meetings and that I sent my regrets. More lies, more manipulation of the narrative. I showed Jordan the original text from my father, watching his eyes widen in shock. "I had no idea," he said. "That's messed up, especially considering how much you helped them out." "What do you mean?" Jordan gave me a strange look. "You know, with money and stuff. Everyone knows you're the one who makes sure the bills get paid." "Everyone knows?" I repeated, feeling a chill. "Well, yeah. Amanda's always talking about how you're funding everything behind the scenes. She calls you the family sponsor, like it's some kind of joke." The family sponsor. Like I was a corporation donating to charity for tax benefits. I felt sick. "There's more," Jordan continued, looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Greg's been telling people he's the one supporting your parents, taking credit for paying their property taxes and stuff. I only know it's not true because Amanda got drunk at Christmas and started complaining about how you never let anyone forget who holds the purse strings." Another betrayal. My brother taking credit for my financial support while simultaneously using my credit card without permission. And my sister painting me as someone who lorded my money over the family, when in reality I'd been carefully anonymous in my giving, never wanting anyone to feel indebted. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked Jordan. He sighed. "Because it's not right. I saw those texts and realized how much they're manipulating everything. Plus, Amanda asked me to help convince you to write a check for some lake house they want to buy. Said it would be a gift from the whole family to your parents." That's when I realized how bad it's gotten. After Jordan left, I continued my investigation, now looking at the venue for Mom's birthday. I called the Riverfront Hotel directly, identifying myself as the person who had made the reservation and paid the deposit. "Yes, Mr. DeLuca, we have you down for the Riverview room on Saturday," the manager confirmed. "Is there a problem with the arrangements?" "I just wanted to confirm who is listed as the contact person for the event," I said. "That would be Paul DeLuca. He's listed as the primary contact, with you as the financial contact." So my father had put himself as the face of the event, while keeping me as the wallet. It was becoming a familiar pattern. As I continued digging, I made the most disturbing discovery yet. Among my bank records was a series of transfers to an account labeled Family Emergency Fund. I had set this up 3 years ago at my father's request, depositing $500 monthly to create a safety net for unexpected family needs. As far as I knew, it had rarely been used. But the bank statements told a different story. Money was being regularly transferred out of that account, not for emergencies, but into another account I didn't recognize. When I called the bank to inquire, I learned this second account was in my father's name only. For 3 years, he had been redirecting my emergency fund contributions into his personal account. The betrayal was complete, not just taking advantage of my generosity, but actively deceiving me about where my money was going. As the evidence of manipulation mounted, my resolve strengthened. It was time to take action. The next morning, I woke before dawn. I hadn't slept well, but adrenaline and determination kept me focused. Today was the day I would dismantle the financial web that had entangled me with my family for 7 years. I had my plan ready, my documentation in order, and my mind made up. I started with the venue for Mom's birthday. The call was brief but difficult. "Riverfront Hotel, Events Department. This is Marissa speaking." "Hi, Marissa. This is Rocco DeLuca. I need to cancel the reservation for the DeLuca birthday party this Saturday." "Oh." She sounded surprised. "That's very short notice, Mr. DeLuca. The cancellation fee at this point would be substantial." "I understand. I'm the one who paid the deposit, and I authorize you to keep it as the cancellation fee. I just need the event removed from your calendar. May I ask the reason for cancellation? Perhaps we can help resolve any issues with the arrangements." I hesitated, unwilling to air family drama to a stranger. "The circumstances have changed," I said finally. "The event will no longer be taking place as planned." After confirming the cancellation and receiving an email confirmation, I moved on to the bank accounts. First was a visit to Three Rivers Bank, where I had 3 joint accounts with various family members. "I'd like to close these accounts," I told the personal banker, sliding the account numbers across the desk. "These are joint accounts, Mr. DeLuca," she reminded me after checking her system. "Both parties typically need to be present to close them." I understand, but I've checked your bank's policies. As a joint account holder, I have the right to remove myself from the account without the other party's presence. I'd like to do that now. She looked uncomfortable, but nodded. That's correct. I'll need to see your ID, and you'll need to sign several forms. For the next hour, I methodically removed myself from every joint account, transferred my portions of the funds to my personal account, and ensured all automatic payments from my primary accounts to family expenses were canceled. The banker watched with professional neutrality, but I could feel her curiosity about the unusual transactions. Is there a problem with these accounts? She finally asked as I signed the last form. No problem, I said. Just overdue changes. Next came the credit cards. 3 phone calls to cancel cards where family members were authorized users. 2 more calls to update automatic payment information for bills I would continue to cover directly, like mom's medication. 1 final call to my landlord, removing my brother as an emergency contact with access to my apartment. By noon, I had dismantled most of the financial connections binding me to my family. The process was exhausting not just practically but emotionally. Each signature, each confirmation number, each "Are you sure?" from customer service representatives felt like cutting away a piece of my identity. I had been the provider for so long that I wasn't entirely sure who I was without that role. I took a break for lunch, forcing myself to eat, even though I had no appetite. As I picked at a sandwich, I checked my phone. No messages from my family yet. They wouldn't know what I'd done until they tried to use one of the accounts or cards I'd closed. The thought brought no satisfaction, only a hollow feeling in my chest. In the afternoon, I met with Alan Peterson, my family's lawyer. I had known him since childhood when he handled my grandfather's will, and he had always been fair with all of us. "This is unusual, Rocco," he said after I explained why I needed to document my financial separation from my family. "Family disagreements usually don't require legal documentation unless there's a divorce or custody issue involved." "I understand it's unusual," I said, "but I need a record that clearly shows what support I've provided in the past and what I'm willing to continue providing going forward. If there are disputes later, I want an impartial third party to have the facts." Alan looked troubled. "Has something specific happened to prompt this?" I showed him my father's text and my sister's comment. Then I showed him my financial records and the documentation of unauthorized use of my accounts. His expression grew more serious as he reviewed the evidence. "I see. This goes beyond a simple family disagreement." "Yes, it does. And I want to be clear. I'm not looking to punish them or create hardship. I'll continue covering my mother's medication directly. I've arranged for her prescriptions to be paid from my account at the pharmacy, but I can't continue to be the family bank while being treated like an outsider." Alan nodded slowly. "I'll prepare the documentation. And Rocco, for what it's worth, I think you're handling this more maturely than many would in your position." By evening I was emotionally drained, but had completed most of my list. All financial ties severed except for mom's medication. All automatic payments canceled with proper notification to the service providers. All documentation filed with Alan. The only things left were the smaller digital connections, removing family members from my streaming services, my phone plan, and other minor conveniences they had enjoyed on my dime. As I worked through these final tasks, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, but the area code was from my parents' neighborhood. "Hello? Rocco? It's Mrs. Patterson from next door to your parents." Mrs. Patterson had lived next to my family since before I was born. She was in her 70s now, and had always been kind to me. "Mrs. Patterson, how are you?" I tried to sound normal despite my exhaustion. "I'm fine, dear, but I wanted to call you about something. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from your mother's emergency contact list." "Not at all. Is everything okay? Is Mom all right?" "Oh, she's fine. Physically, at least. But I overheard something today that bothered me, and I thought you should know." She paused. "I was in my garden, and your father and sister were on the back porch. They were discussing you, and, well, it wasn't very nice. Your sister said something about you thinking you're better than everyone because of your fancy job, and your father agreed." I closed my eyes. the hurt fresh again despite all the similar comments I'd already discovered. "But then your mother came out," Mrs. Patterson continued, "and she defended you something fierce. Said you work hard for everything you have, and they should be proud instead of resentful. Said you've done more for the family than they know, and they ought to show more respect." My eyes snapped open. "Mom said that?" "She did. And it's not the first time. Whenever they start in about you, she stands up for you. I thought you should know that at least one person in that house appreciates you." The revelation hit me hard. Mom had been defending me all this time, while the others undermined me. It changed nothing about my decision to separate my finances, but it altered my understanding of the family dynamic. Mom wasn't part of the conspiracy to use me. She was possibly another victim of it. "Thank you for telling me, Mrs. Patterson. I appreciate it more than you know." After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time, processing this new information. The pain of betrayal was still there, but now it was mixed with a thin thread of hope that not everything in my family relationship was built on exploitation. 4 days had passed since my father's text, and I had completely restructured my financial life. It felt both terrifying and liberating, like jumping from a high dive for the first time. I was free from the constant drain on my resources, but also disconnected from the role I had played for so long. Who was I if not the family provider? As I pondered this question, my phone suddenly exploded with notifications, text messages, voicemails, missed calls, all from family members, all at once, as if orchestrated. They had discovered what I had done. My phone continued to light up with notifications as the reality of my actions rippled through my family. I watched the messages accumulate without opening them, feeling strangely detached from the chaos I had created. 37 missed calls, 52 text messages, 18 voicemails. The numbers kept climbing. I wasn't ready to engage yet. I needed time to process everything, to prepare for the inevitable confrontations. Instead of responding, I turned my phone to silent and contacted Dr. Wilson, my therapist, requesting an emergency session. "What you're feeling is completely normal," Dr. Wilson assured me later that afternoon in his office. "You've made a significant change to a long-established dynamic. It's natural to feel conflicted, even guilty." "I don't feel guilty," I realized as I said it. "I feel lighter, like I've set down something I've been carrying for years." "That's the liberation of establishing healthy boundaries," he said. "But be prepared. When people are used to having access to your resources, they rarely give that up without resistance. The coming days might be difficult." "I know. They've already started trying to contact me. And how do you plan to respond?" I considered the question carefully. "On my terms, when I'm ready, not in the heat of emotion on either side." Dr. Wilson nodded approvingly. "That's wise. Remember, boundaries aren't about punishing others. They're about caring for yourself. You can maintain your boundaries while still being compassionate." After my session, I felt steadier, more prepared to face whatever came next. I stopped at a small cafe near my apartment, needing a moment of normalcy before diving into the family drama waiting on my phone. As I waited for my coffee, someone called my name. "Rocco? Rocco DeLuca? Is that you?" I turned to find Mr. Harrington, my high school English teacher, smiling at me. He had aged, his hair now completely gray, but his eyes still held the same warmth I remembered. "Mr. Harrington, what a surprise." I shook his hand, genuinely pleased to see him. "I thought that was you. Still in Boston after all these years?" "Yes, I work downtown. Financial analysis for Westridge Partners." His smile widened. "I'm not surprised at all. You always had a head for numbers, even when you were supposed to be analyzing Shakespeare." We chatted for a few minutes about his retirement and my career. As we were about to part ways, he put a hand on my shoulder. "I always knew you'd do well, Rocco. You had that rare combination of intelligence and integrity. Never let anyone make you doubt your worth." The words hit me with unexpected force. Here was someone who saw value in me beyond what I could provide, who had believed in me long before I had any success to share. It was a poignant contrast to the family that seemed to value me only for my financial support. With renewed strength, I returned to my apartment and finally opened my phone to face the deluge. The messages followed a predictable pattern, though the emotional intensity surprised even me. From my father, the progression was clear. First anger, then disbelief, then panic, and finally desperate pleading. "What the hell did you do? The venue called saying the party's canceled. You can't just pull out like this. Your mother will be devastated. Answer your damn phone, Rocco. The accounts are all closed. We can't access anything. What are we supposed to do about bills this month? This is childish, Rocco. If you're upset about something, we can talk about it. Please, son. I don't know how we're going to manage without your help. At least call me back." My sister Amanda's messages were even more revealing. Her initial mockery had transformed into panic about her own financial situation. Wow, real mature response to not getting your way. Did you seriously cancel Mom's birthday because you weren't invited? Talk about proving Dad's point. The credit cards aren't working. What did you do? My student loan payment is due in 3 days and the auto pay isn't set up anymore. You know I can't cover that on my salary. I have wedding debts that need to be paid this month. You can't just cut us off without warning. Please, Rocco. I'm sorry about the text. I shouldn't have said that. Please help me just one more time. Greg's messages showed the least self-awareness, moving from accusations of betrayal to requests for one more favor without acknowledging the contradiction. Dude, what gives? My card got declined at dinner. You're seriously cutting us all off? That's cold, bro. Dad's freaking out about the mortgage payment. What am I supposed to tell him? You know I got bills too, right? This affects all of us. Whatever Dad said to you, that's between you and him. Why punish the rest of us? Look, I know things have been tense, but I really need one more favor, just until my next paycheck. The extended family messages revealed how the situation was being portrayed to others. Aunts, uncles, and cousins had been told I was having a breakdown or temper tantrum, with no mention of the years of financial support I'd provided, or the hurtful exclusion that had triggered my actions. But the most important message came last, a voicemail from my mother that made me stop cold. "Rocco, honey, it's Mom. I don't understand what's happening. Your father just told me the birthday party is canceled, and there's something about accounts being closed. But what upsets me most is hearing that you thought you weren't welcome at my birthday. Of course you're welcome. I've been looking forward to seeing you. Your father told me weeks ago that you might be too busy with work to attend, and I was disappointed but understood. Now I don't know what to believe. Please call me. I love you." Her voice sounded confused and hurt, but not angry. And her message contradicted what my father had told me. He had said the family decided I wasn't invited, but according to my mother, he had told her I might be too busy to attend. More lies, more manipulation, but this time, it had affected my relationship with my mother, who apparently had no idea what was really going on. I sat with the phone in my hand, considering my next move. The easy path would be to call them all back, to explain myself, to possibly even reverse some of the financial changes I'd made. But that would only return us to the same unhealthy dynamic. Instead, I texted my mother directly. "Mom, there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to meet you tomorrow to talk in person, just you. Is that possible?" Her reply came quickly. "Of course, honey. Your father has a doctor's appointment in the morning. I could meet you at Rosie's Cafe at 11? Perfect. See you then. And Mom, I love you too." With that arrangement made, I turned my phone off completely. I needed a clear head for tomorrow's conversation, and engaging with the rest of the family's messages would only cloud my judgment. They had survived without my money before I had a career. They would figure it out now. For the first time in years, I felt truly in control of my own life, my own resources, and my own relationships. It was a fragile feeling, one I knew would be tested in the coming days, but it was real, and it was mine. Rosie's Cafe was quiet at 11 on a Wednesday morning. Mom was already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth with 2 coffees waiting on the table. She looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable than I remembered. When she saw me, her face lit up with a smile that immediately made me question whether I'd made the right decision in cutting off financial support. "Rocco," she said, standing to hug me, It's so good to see you. I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same brand she'd worn my entire life. Hi, Mom. We sat down, an awkward silence falling between us. Where to begin? How to explain years of resentment and hurt without sounding petty or vindictive? Mom solved the problem by speaking first. Your father says you're angry with the family, that you've canceled my birthday party and closed all the accounts. Direct and to the point, just like Mom had always been. I took a deep breath. Did he tell you why? She frowned slightly. He said you were upset about not being invited to the party. But that doesn't make any sense because I always assumed you were invited. It's my birthday. Why wouldn't my son be there? I pulled out my phone and showed her the text from Dad. Her eyes widened as she read it, and the color drained from her face. I don't understand, she whispered. Why would he say the family decided anything? I never said you were an embarrassment. Never. I know, Mom. Mrs. Patterson told me how you defend me when the others criticize. Tears welled in her eyes. You're my son. Of course I defend you. But why would your father say such a horrible thing to you? This was the harder part, the conversation I'd been dreading. Mom, there's something you need to know. For the past 7 years, I've been financially supporting the family in ways you probably aren't aware of. Her confusion was genuine. What do you mean, supporting? We've borrowed money occasionally, but your father handles all our finances. It's more than occasional borrowing, Mom. I've been paying the property taxes on your house for 5 years. I cover half your mortgage payment every month. I pay for your medication. I funded Amanda's entire wedding last year. I've been depositing money into Dad's emergency fund every month since I got my first promotion. With each revelation, her expression shifted from confusion to shock to dismay. But your father told me his investments were doing well. He said the overtime at the plant was covering our expenses. There haven't been investments, Mom. And the plant reduced everyone's hours 3 years ago, remember? You told me yourself. Mom sat back, her coffee untouched. I don't understand. Why wouldn't he tell me? Why keep this a secret? I think, I said carefully, that he didn't want to admit he needed help. And once the help became routine, it was easier to keep hiding it than to explain why he'd lied in the first place. But Amanda's wedding? That was $30,000. $38,000, actually. They told me they'd lost their savings in a bad investment and wouldn't be able to have the wedding they'd planned. I offered to help, and it just escalated from there. Tears were flowing freely down Mom's cheeks now. All this time, I thought we were managing on our own. I've been so proud of how your father handled things after his hours were cut. And it was you all along. I reached across the table and took her hand. I was happy to help, Mom. That's not why I'm upset. I'm upset because while I was providing this support, Dad and the others were telling me I wasn't welcome at family events. They were mocking me behind my back, calling me arrogant and stuck up, while simultaneously relying on my money. Mom squeezed my hand, her expression hardening. We're going to fix this. All of us. Together. Starting with the truth. She insisted on a family meeting that evening at the house. I was reluctant, preferring to maintain distance while emotions were still raw, but Mom was determined. They need to hear this from both of us, she said. And I need to hear their explanations face to face. So at 7 o'clock I found myself back in my childhood home for the first time in months, sitting at the dining room table across from my father, with Amanda and Greg flanking him like lieutenants. Mom sat beside me, a united front I hadn't expected but deeply appreciated. I've asked you all here because we need to clear the air, Mom began, her voice steadier than I'd anticipated. Rocco has shown me some things that disturb me deeply, and I want to hear your side before making any judgments. Dad shifted uncomfortably, not meeting her eyes. I don't know what he's told you, but he's overreacting to a simple miscommunication about your birthday. There was no need to cancel the whole event. The miscommunication, Mom said, her voice taking on an edge I rarely heard, was you telling me Rocco was too busy to attend while telling him he wasn't invited because he's an embarrassment. I've seen the text, Paul. Don't bother denying it. Dad's face flushed. It was a mistake. I was frustrated that day. I didn't mean it. And what about the financial deception? Mom continued. Were the past 7 years of hiding Rocco's support also a mistake? The silence that followed was deafening. Dad looked trapped. Amanda suddenly found the table fascinating, and Greg couldn't stop fidgeting. "I didn't want you to worry," Dad finally said. "After my hours were cut, we couldn't make ends meet. Rocco offered to help temporarily, and then it just became the new normal. That doesn't explain why you've been portraying me as an arrogant snob to the rest of the family," I said, keeping my voice level. "Or why Amanda and Greg have been mocking me in group chats while I paid for Amanda's wedding and let Greg use my credit card." "We were just joking," Amanda protested weakly. "You know, sibling stuff. Was it also a joke when you told everyone I think I'm too good for the family? Or when you planned to use Mom's birthday to ask me for money for a lake house?" Her eyes widened. "How did you know about that?" "I found the emails. I found a lot of things once I started looking." "So you've been spying on us?" Greg jumped in, trying to shift focus. "Going through private messages?" "Only after I discovered you've been using my credit card without permission for months," I countered. "Want to explain those electronics store purchases in Quincy?" Greg paled, his bluster evaporating. Dad tried another tack. "Look, we've all made mistakes here, said things we shouldn't have, but canceling your mother's birthday and cutting us off financially without warning was an extreme reaction." "I disagree," Mom said before I could respond. "From where I'm sitting, Rocco has been extraordinarily generous for years while being treated with disrespect behind his back. The fact that none of you told me about his financial support shows you knew it was wrong to accept it while treating him this way." The conversation continued for hours, painful truths emerging with each exchange. Dad eventually admitted that redirecting money from the emergency fund had started as borrowing but became habit when there were no consequences. Amanda confessed that her resentment stemmed from comparing her struggling art gallery salary to my corporate success. Greg, the youngest and most immature, had the least insight into his behavior, but at least acknowledged using my credit card was technically stealing. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm I didn't entirely feel. This wasn't about revenge or even vindication. It was about finally being seen and respected by my family, not for my money, but for who I was as a person. As the evening wore on, Mom left the room briefly and returned carrying a shoebox. She placed it on the table and opened the lid. "I want to show you all something," she said, pulling out newspaper clippings, photographs, and certificates. They were all about me. A newspaper mention when I made the dean's list in college, the announcement of my first promotion, photos from professional events I'd attended, awards I'd received throughout my career. "I've kept everything," Mom said softly. "Every achievement, every milestone. I've always been so proud of you, Rocco. I thought everyone else was too." The box was physical proof that at least one person in my family had valued me beyond my financial contributions. It was a small thing, perhaps, but in that moment, it meant everything. Dad stared at the collection, then at Mom, his expression a mix of shame and revelation. "I didn't know you kept all this." "Because you never asked," she replied. "You were too busy being jealous of your own son's success instead of celebrating it." Her words hung in the air, a truth too raw to deny. Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry," he said finally, looking directly at me for the first time that evening. "I've been unfair to you, worse than unfair. I've been taking advantage of your generosity while resenting you for being in a position to offer it. That's not what a father should do." It wasn't a perfect apology, and it didn't erase years of hurt. But it was a beginning, a first step toward whatever our relationship might become. Amanda and Greg followed with their own apologies, varying in sincerity and insight. Amanda seemed genuinely remorseful about the wedding expenses, while Greg was mostly sorry he'd been caught using my credit card. Both, however, recognized that things could not continue as they had been. As the night concluded, I made my position clear. I'm willing to work on rebuilding our relationships, but the financial dynamics have to change. I'll continue covering Mom's medication because her health matters to me. Everything else needs to be renegotiated from a place of respect and transparency. They agreed, though I suspected the full impact of life without my financial support hadn't sunk in yet. That would come in the days ahead when bills arrived and luxuries had to be reconsidered. As I left the house, Mom walked me to my car. "I'm so sorry, Rocco," she said. "I should have seen what was happening." I hugged her tightly. "It's not your fault, Mom. They kept you in the dark deliberately." "Still," she pulled back to look at me, "your birthday is still important to me. Let me plan something smaller, just for family. A fresh start." The old me would have immediately offered to pay for it. Instead, I said, "I'd like that. Let me know when and where, and I'll be there." As I drove home, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the confrontation was over, sadness for the years of misunderstanding, cautious hope for what might come next. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Changing established family patterns never was. But for the first time in years, I felt like my family might eventually see me for who I really was, not just for what I could provide. One week after the family confrontation, I found myself at Bella Vita, Mom's favorite Italian restaurant in our old neighborhood. The private back room was decorated simply but elegantly, with flowers and soft lighting. No elaborate venue, no expensive band, no crowd of distant relatives and family friends. Just Mom, Dad, Amanda, Greg, me, and a few of Mom's closest friends. I hadn't paid for any of it. Dad had dipped into his actual savings, not my emergency fund, to cover the modest celebration. Amanda had handled the decorations herself rather than hiring a designer. Greg had created a playlist instead of booking live music. It was smaller than originally planned, but somehow more meaningful. Mom beamed as she entered the room to a chorus of "surprise" and "happy birthday." She hugged each of us, lingering a bit longer with me. "Thank you for being here," she whispered in my ear. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied, and meant it. The dinner that followed was unlike any family gathering I could remember. There was an undercurrent of awareness, of careful consideration that had never been present before. Dad asked about my work without the usual undercurrent of resentment. Amanda mentioned her gallery without hinting at financial struggles. Greg actually listened when others spoke instead of scrolling through his phone. We were all trying, imperfectly, awkwardly, but sincerely. After dessert, Mom opened her presents. Thoughtful, personal gifts within everyone's actual budgets. My gift was a digital photo frame preloaded with pictures I'd collected from her friends and family, spanning her 60 years. The joy on her face as she scrolled through the memories was worth more than any expensive jewelry or luxury item I could have purchased. As the evening wound down, I found myself on the restaurant's small patio with Dad, both of us nursing after dinner drinks in a moment of unexpected privacy. "I want you to know," he said after a long silence, "that I've started looking for part-time work to supplement my income from the plant." I nodded, unsure how to respond. "The mortgage company agreed to a modification that I can actually afford," he continued. "And I've sold the boat. Never used it much anyway." "You sold the boat?" The small fishing boat had been his pride and joy for years, though I couldn't remember the last time he'd actually taken it out on the water. "Yeah, got a decent price too." He took a sip of his drink. "The point is, I'm figuring it out, without relying on you." The words could have been defensive, but his tone conveyed something different. Pride, perhaps. Not the false pride that had led him to hide his financial struggles, but the genuine satisfaction of handling his own affairs. "That's good, Dad. I'm glad. I meant what I said last week. I'm sorry for how I've treated you. It wasn't right, and it wasn't fair." "I appreciate that." He turned to face me directly. "I was jealous, Rocco. My own son out-earned me by 30 when he was 25. Do you know what that does to a man who's defined himself by being the provider all his life?" "I can imagine it's difficult," I said carefully. "But that's not a reason to exclude me from family events or talk about me behind my back." "No, it's not." He sighed heavily. "I let my insecurity poison how I saw you. Instead of being proud, I got resentful. And then when you started helping us financially, it just made it worse. Every check, every payment, was a reminder that I wasn't enough anymore." The honesty was unexpected and oddly touching. "You could have talked to me about it." "Talking about feelings wasn't exactly encouraged in my generation," he said with a wry smile. "But I'm learning. Your mother's made that very clear." I laughed softly. Mom's always been the emotionally intelligent one in the family. That she has. He raised his glass slightly. To doing better. I clinked my glass against his. To doing better. Inside, I found Amanda clearing dessert plates, despite the restaurant staff assuring her they would handle it. Her compulsive helping had always been her way of maintaining control in uncertain situations. Need a hand? I offered. She looked up, surprised. No, I'm almost done. Force of habit. I leaned against the wall, watching her stack plates with precision. How's the gallery? Honestly? Struggling. The economy's hit the art market hard. She set the plates aside and faced me. I've been applying for grants and considering taking on a business partner. That sounds smart. Yeah, well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear nervously. Look, Rocco, about the wedding money. We don't need to talk about that now. Yes, we do. Her voice was firm. You gave us $38,000 for a wedding that, in retrospect, was ridiculous. I took advantage of your generosity, and I'm sorry. The apology caught me off guard. Amanda had always been the least likely in our family to admit fault. Jason and I have worked out a payment plan, she continued. It's going to take years, but we're going to pay you back. $200 a month to start, more when we can manage it. Amanda, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her eyes were steady, not just for the money, but for what it represents. You're my brother, not my sponsor. I want a relationship based on something real, not financial dependence. I nodded, understanding completely. I'd like that too. Later, I found Greg outside, smoking a cigarette despite having supposedly quit years ago. He quickly stubbed it out when he saw me. Don't tell Mom, he said immediately. Your lungs, your choice, I replied, leaning against the railing beside him. Greg had always been the hardest for me to connect with. 7 years younger, he'd been a teenager when I started my career, too caught up in his own world to notice or care about family dynamics. By the time he was old enough to be aware, the pattern of financial dependence was already established. I sold some stuff, he said abruptly, to pay you back for the credit card charges. What kind of stuff? My gaming system. Some collectibles. That signed baseball you got me for Christmas a few years back. The baseball had been expensive, a prized possession he'd displayed prominently in his apartment. You didn't have to sell that. He shrugged. Wanted to. Feels better this way. He paused, visibly uncomfortable. I also got a second job. Nights at the convenience store near my place. That can't be easy with your day job. It's not. But it's what adults do, right? Pay their own bills. There was a new maturity in his voice I hadn't heard before. I never really had to before. There was always you, or Dad, or someone to bail me out. I nodded, understanding his journey better than he might realize. Learning financial independence is important. I'm proud of you for taking that step. He looked surprised by the praise. Thanks. That means a lot coming from you. As the evening ended and we all prepared to leave, Mom pulled me aside for a final private moment. I've been thinking about what happened, about all the years you supported us without recognition, she said, and I keep coming back to one question. Why did you do it? I considered my answer carefully. Because you're my family, and I thought that's what family does, takes care of each other. But it wasn't mutual. We weren't taking care of you. No, I admitted, but I think I needed to feel needed. Being the provider gave me a clear role, a purpose in the family that went beyond just showing up for holidays. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Rocco, you never needed to buy your place in this family. You've always belonged, just for being you. Her words touched something deep inside me, a wound I hadn't fully acknowledged. I know that now, I said, or at least, I'm learning to believe it. Good. She squeezed my hand. Because the most valuable thing you can give us isn't your money. It's your time, your thoughts, your presence in our lives. That's what I've missed most these past few years as everyone got caught up in the financial dynamics. In the weeks and months that followed, our family began the slow work of rebuilding relationships on healthier foundations. There were missteps and old habits that died hard. Dad occasionally slipped into passive-aggressive comments about money. Amanda sometimes forgot that our new relationship didn't include emergency loans. Greg had the most difficult adjustment, having never known adult life without financial safety nets. But there were positive changes, too. Family gatherings became more genuine, less performative. Conversations included actual listening instead of waiting for turns to speak. Financial discussions happened openly and honestly, with everyone acknowledging their true circumstances instead of maintaining facades of success or neediness. I established clear boundaries with each family member, tailored to our specific relationships and history. With Dad, I focused on building mutual respect, particularly around career achievements and financial independence. With Amanda, I developed a repayment plan that respected her dignity while acknowledging the debt. With Greg, I offered guidance rather than bailouts, helping him learn financial skills I'd acquired years earlier. And with Mom, I built the most honest relationship of all. One where she knew exactly who I was, what I contributed, and how much I valued her presence in my life. 6 months after the confrontation that changed everything, I sat in my apartment reviewing my finances. Without the constant drain of supporting my family, my savings had grown substantially. The emotional weight had lifted too, leaving room for new possibilities in my life. I had started dating again, joined a community volunteer program, even taken actual vacation time for the first time in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Family dinner Sunday? I'm making your favorite lasagna." I smiled as I replied, "Wouldn't miss it." "Need me to bring anything?" "Just yourself," came her response. "That's all we need." And for the first time in years, I believed it was true. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? I'd appreciate hearing your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is learning when to say no, even when it feels easier to just keep giving. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you navigate your own family dynamics with both compassion and self-respect.